Big changes made to the playoff. How does that affect Auburn?
In the world full of podcasts, he's the undisputed heavyweight champion of hot takes, an Auburn sports homer, master of the book, and message board legend. Get your buttons buttoned and your hats flattened because the Top Button Podcast is about to kick off, and you don't want to miss your courtside seat. Now, here's your host, Charlie Five.
Yes, sir. We're back. It's another episode of the Top Button Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Rush, a.k.a. Charlie Five, and it's dadgummit. It's another Friendship Friday, and we're ready to rock and roll. We got so much to talk about. There's some big changes in the 12-team playoff that we're going to discuss. Does it help Auburn? Does it hurt Auburn? Does it matter at this point in time? And then what playoff scenario would help Auburn the most? And then we're going to have some fun. We're going to talk about our favorite Auburn teams of all time. And then our best and worst analyst. Who do we love? Who do we hate? We're going to have a lot of fun. I'll introduce you in just a second. But before we jump into all that, we got to give a quick shout out to mybookie.ag. Use coupon code BARN, B-A-R-N, for a 50% deposit bonus. Hey, J-Pat, are you pounding the over? What do you got? Auburn 7.5 wins. What are you taking?
I was a little skeptical with this line at first, but the more and more I'm listening to you and Zach and everybody, I might just have to go with that 8. I think we might get there.
You can get it at mybookie.ag. Hit that over if you want to get on that action, but you definitely take advantage of the deposit bonus. It's give them $100. They're going to give you 50 back free to play with. So have some fun with that. Easy deposits, easy withdrawals. It's mybookie.ag. Welcome to the show, Jay Pat from thebarnauburn.com. Glad you can join in. Brother, let me tell you something. It's been a rock star show every single time we've done this. So you got some big shoes to fill. But thanks for joining. I'm pumped for this show.
Oh yeah, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Huge fan of yours, Charlie, and huge fan of your podcast. I think it's great. I remember when you started it, and I thought
That's
you always
awesome.
did a good job. But yeah, but before we get started today, I gotta.
You got to get it buttoned up. Get it buttoned up.
Button there, just one last thing we have left to do.
Why do they put a button? Why do they put a button at the top if it doesn't need to be buttoned? That's my question. I want to know the answer to that one. All right, let's talk about the playoff. There was some big news. The playoff, it was like they decided, hey, we're about to go into a room and vote on some stuff, and then they just turned around, came out, and had a solution. So the 12-team playoff this year will now be like every other NCAA sport, and there's no automatic seeds. So what does that mean? You look at last year, they had it set up to where certain conferences got auto seeding. It's different from an auto bid. So remember Boise was the number 4 overall seed in the college football playoff last year. They got a bye. And then what's funny is all 4 of the teams that got a bye last year lost in their second round game. Now, hey, if you win the conference, you still get, if you win a Power 5 conference, you still get an auto bid, but then the committee will then seed you from there, which I think makes the most sense. What are your thoughts on this newest change in the playoff?
Yeah, you're right. This really did just kind of pop up today. I had heard some rumblings about it, and then, I see the notification on my phone, and here we go. I really do like the straight seeding better because I think that the straight seeding rewards playing better competition and being a better caliber program. If you look at last year, you had Texas and Penn State were on the wrong side of that, being punished for being, very high-power programs, had a great resume, and instead Boise State and Arizona State, who didn't finish as high in the rankings, still got those auto bids just by virtue of being the best group of 5 and Arizona State being the conference champion there in the Big 12. So I think that it's kind of a flawed system just because, I don't think you're necessarily getting the best teams 1 through 4 in the format that it was in.
Clearly. I mean, all 4 lost. They all 4 lost their first round game. This is my thing. I don't even know where this came up. Why was this a deal in the first place? I mean, think about the NCAA basketball tournament. You have your conference tournament, that if you win the conference tournament, you get an auto bid. You don't get an auto seed. There are a lot of there's been times where you can win a conference tournament and you're still an 8 seed, like because of what you've done the whole rest of the season. Now, I know football's a little bit different, but football's regular season is basically the playoff. I mean, if you think about it, is basically the conference tournament, and then you kind of work your way to the conference championship game. So I'm totally fine. I'm totally fine giving a conference champion a bid. I think that's fair. But there is no real precedent to have that determine your seed. Like, it's not that way in baseball. It's not that way in softball. It's not that way in basketball. It's not that way in really anything that we do. So I've always been that whole setup was kind of weird to begin with. And I think last year was kind of everything kind of blew up in their face. So I think we're finally starting to make sense. And we're getting this thing closer and closer and closer till I think it's getting closer to, what you see in the NFL. I want to get your thoughts on this. Do you think that this at all helps or hurts Auburn or changes anything? Or do you need like a whole different format before you really start seeing an impact on what Auburn's trying to do?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel kind of both ways on this because, you could say that it would help Auburn, right? Like if Auburn maybe wasn't the best team but found their way into the championship game, and then all you got to do is win that game, and then you're in and you're a top 4 seed. Like theoretically, that's where you want to be.
Sure,
but
sure.
Then again, as you said, all of those teams lost who had that first round bye. So at least off of the experience we have, maybe that doesn't help you so much.
Yeah.
And I think the straight seeding, helps Auburn because I think Auburn, any year that Auburn is like the best version of Auburn, they're going to be a higher caliber team and better rated than a team like Boise State or Arizona State from last year. Like if Auburn's reaching their potential, they're going to be higher than them. So
yeah,
and straight seeding for that reason.
Exactly. If Auburn plays to where you want to be, to where you're competing at the top level, you definitely don't want to get screwed by some completely arbitrary seeding system. Like there was no real basis to it whatsoever. It was 100% arbitrary. I do like that aspect. I don't know that it changes necessarily Auburn's best path to the playoff. I think the next round, which I think will happen, in the very near future where they're talking about it, I think taking it to a 16-team playoff, getting rid of the byes, to me, that has always made the most sense to me, just across the board, especially if they move it to, eventually I feel like it's going to happen where you're going to have like 64 super teams or super conference or 64 teams and like 4 super conferences. And then, the champions of those will make it to the playoff. And then you have your at-large bids. I don't really know exactly how this particular thing helps Auburn's path, but I think it definitely helps if Auburn gets there, helps them, puts them in a better position to advance. I'm ready to be in the playoff talk, man. I don't know about you. I'm ready to talk. I'm ready for Auburn to be in the conversation.
It's been too long since this felt like Auburn's been relevant. This is my freshman year of college, 2017.
Yeah. I'm not even necessarily saying that like I want to be, it's like playoffs or bust or whatever. I just want it to be to where like we're playing for something in late October, early November. Like I want it to feel like I just like being in the conversation. I want to be in, like there is a pathway to the playoff late in the season, not to where like we're, mid-September and we're ready for basketball season. Like that's just been the theme for far too long. And, I know that like preseason fandom goes through a cycle. Like you probably you start off in a little bit of pessimism and then you slowly build yourself up to, oh my God, we're going to make the playoff. And then maybe you take a little dip down or sometime middle summer, and then by the kickoff, you're ready to go again. But I really do feel like the pieces are in place for Auburn to be able to be, I'm not saying a playoff team, but definitely, be in the conversation late and then see where the chips fall at that point in time. Am I way out of bounds?
Yeah, no, 100%. You're absolutely right. I mean, with Auburn lately, yeah, we really haven't had that much of a sniff of success these past few years. Um, come November, like we're pretty much done. Like
Yeah.
it'd be nice to see. And it's like you said, we don't have to be, in the playoff every year. That doesn't have to be the criteria. I just want Auburn to get back to being what Auburn traditionally had been for several years before the last few. 8-4 is just kind of your benchmark average season. And every now and then, every 4 or 5 years, maybe 3, see Auburn compete for the playoffs, compete for a championship, maybe win the SEC. Like that's what Auburn had done for pretty much the entire 21st century up until Brian Harsin gets here, essentially, in the end of Malzahn. So it'd just be nice to see, yeah.
Yeah, and I hope, again, I know we're pumped up about the roster, and there's all these writers and analysts and things that are giving Auburn a lot of love. We may talk about some of those here in just a second, but it makes you feel like Auburn maybe, hopefully, if the coach, you can shore up some of the coaching issues, clean up some of the special teams and small things that cost you games, that maybe Auburn has a shot to make some noise here, at least late in the season. So we're going to talk about our favorite Auburn teams in just a second. But before we do that, let's give a quick shout out to Rhoback.com. Use coupon code BUTTON20 to take 20% off your order. They got polos. You got any Rhoback gear? You like Rhoback?
I just ordered a hoodie.
There you go.
Yeah, just the other day. So yeah.
Yeah, I will wear hoodies. I'll wear hoodies in like 95-degree weather now. I'm making it happen even in the summer. But no, they got great hoodies, pullovers, quarter zips, but the polos are where it's at. And you can get set up for summer with all the crazy prints. And then if you like more traditional stuff, they got it too. Swim trunks, a little bit of everything. Check them out. It's Rhoback.com. We'll be back right after this. All right, you brought this topic, and I think this is going to be a fun one. You said, "Hey, what's your favorite Auburn teams? Let's pick like three. I mean, 3 or 4, whatever. Doesn't matter. We don't have to necessarily put a limit on it. Favorite Auburn teams, any sport of all time. Obviously, we're a little bit younger, so some of the older heads, don't hate on us. Okay, don't hate on us if we're not saying 1972 type Auburn football team. Like, give us some grace here. This is going to be probably, I would imagine, a lot more recent, like within the past 20 or 30 year team. So, J-Pat, I'll let you start off. Give me your number one, like one of your favorite Auburn teams, and why.
Okay, yeah. First off, though, there are some teams on this list that were before my lifetime. Okay. I'm a bit of an Auburn historian, so I know about some of these teams. So some of these old heads might like some of the things I have to say. But 100% for me is very easy. Number one, 2010 football. And the reason is because, you just couldn't have had more of a perfect season than that.
Yeah, quite literally. Could not.
Yeah, you have literally the perfect regular season, 12-0. You have the Heisman winner. You win the SEC. You just destroyed South Carolina.
Yeah.
In the SEC. You beat Oregon, win the national championship. You had one of the greatest Iron Bowls I've ever witnessed. When you come back in Tuscaloosa from down 20-something points to win.
Yeah.
That year was just filled with great games and crazy games. And you had Cam Newton, one of the best Auburn players ever. And, I may have been in middle school, but, my family had season tickets, and I remember being at all those games very vividly. It was awesome.
That's a good one. It's hard to argue. That was one of the better Iron Bowls. I can definitely remember. It was a lot of fun. I got snowed in at the national championship. I was going to fly to Birmingham, and our plane iced over. And apparently Birmingham at the time did not have the correct de-icing fluid. So luckily, those tickets were going for insane amounts of money, and I sold mine right before that. So we were just going to take the money and go out there and have a good time. So great memories there. I got a little bit of outside of the box. I don't like to pick all of the, the more obvious answers. No, like not knocking your choice. Obviously, that's a great one. But one of my favorite teams in Auburn history was the 2026 football team. I'm sorry, not 2006 football team. It was just shortly after that, obviously undefeated season. but those boys were bad. And we had some awesome football games. One of the best football games I've ever been to. My favorite football game, and I still say the loudest football game that's maybe ever been played in Jordan-Hare was when they played Florida, the number 2 team in the country. And at the end of the game, like when they had that punt block from Trey Smith, and he did the front flip into the end zone, like the whole stadium was shaking. It was Tim Tebow's freshman year, if I'm not mistaken. That LSU game was electric. You won 7-3. They were just so awesome on defense, and they got it done. They won 11 games that year. But the way the SEC West was, you lose one game and you're behind. And then Auburn, they pulled to Tuberville like they typically did, and lost 2 games they had no business losing to Arkansas and Georgia, both at home. Probably could have been a national championship competitive team. I loved everything about that team. I'm a big Brandon Cox guy. I love Courtney Taylor. I think you had Prochet Rodriguez was another big. Why I remember him making a catch in the Iron Bowl and telling the fans to shush and kind of put that one away. Like that's one of my favorite teams, and probably because I was a student at the time, and just you remember those times a little bit more. But those crowds were crazy. Those games were intense. That 2006 Auburn is definitely one of my favorite teams of all time.
Yeah, that really was a great team as well. And, I still was old enough to remember that season as well. I was at that Florida game. That was awesome. I was at the LSU game. It was amazing. When we just shut down Jamarcus Russell. Great. And like you said, we inexplicably lose those head scratchers to Arkansas and Georgia. But, we still go on and beat Nebraska in the Cotton Bowl. And that was a really fun thing to watch. You're right. I loved Kenny Irons, too. It's my favorite.
Oh, man. So he was awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What you got? What's your number 2 team?
All right,
so favorite team.
Yeah, number 2. See, you went the non-conventional route. I definitely went the conventional route, but I just wanted to make sure this people understood how impressive some of these seasons were that we had. And number 2 for me was also pretty easy. 2019 basketball.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That was just one of the more happy seasons I'll ever remember having as an Auburn fan. We had started to become good at basketball, but we really weren't quite at the point yet where we had done anything crazy. And then after getting pounded by Kentucky in Rupp, we just start this stupid run where we just run through the entire SEC in Nashville to win the tournament.
Yeah.
And just steamrolled good teams in the tournament too, beat Kansas and UNC bad, top-seeded UNC. And then got the revenge against Kentucky, and unfortunately, we all know how the Virginia game went. But, making the first Final Four ever in Auburn's history under Bruce Pearl, and some of those likable players, too, like Bryce and Jared and Chuma, and that was just such a fun team to watch and be a part of.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Funny enough, my number 2 team is the year right after that team, because I call that the what could have been team, and that is the team with Isaac Okoro that got canceled. The season got canceled for COVID. You were feeling really good. You had Samir Dowdy, who was averaging 16 points a game. Isaac Okoro, the number 4 pick in the draft. Javon McCormick, who was he was your closer at the end of a game. He was the guy that was going to hit the game-winning shot. They were that really good, scrappy team, and you still had Austin Wiley. Anthony McLemore, all those guys that made that run in that that Final Four team, that team to me, what could have been, what would have happened if COVID doesn't happen? How deep does that team go? I think you have a really good shot to win the SEC tournament. You're probably somewhere around a 4 or 5 seed, and there you had the best defensive player in college basketball, top 5 NBA pick, and then you had some really good guards. Reminded me a lot of this past year's team, without the the big time necessarily NBA player. So again, I go a little bit unconventional, but it's funny you said that, because mine was I do love that team. Obviously, you can't not love that team, but that team right after, I just, for some reason, the what could have been, I feel like that team could have been special had they not had their season snatched away from them.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. That 2020, you described it perfectly, the what could have been. And we were definitely on that trajectory. We were starting to get hot towards the end of the
Oh
season.
man.
And it could have been the exact same thing as 2019. And I love how you mentioned that season too, because one of my favorite games that I ever attended live was that LSU game that year where we were down
Oh
late,
my.
had that improbable comeback to tie it, and then
Yeah,
we hit
one in
that shot
overtime.
in OT to beat them. That was
That
incredible.
was that
Credit
was
Wofford and that team. Yeah.
that was what's his name? That was McCormick, wasn't it? He went coast to
Yeah.
coast.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then earlier in that year, I think you're playing what, South Alabama. And you probably shouldn't have been in a game with them, but then I think Isaac hits the game winner at the buzzer too. Like there was just so many good games, a lot of memories from that team. Man, think about this: what if Auburn comes off a Final Four and then they go to like a Sweet 16 or Elite Eight with this team? Like what? Just think about where Auburn basketball could have gone from there. Like it's just crazy. It's fun to always talk about what could have been with that team. But anyway, what's your number 3?
And number 3, I'll go a little bit more unconventional with this one, so I'll break it up a little bit. I'm going to go with the 1983 football team.
Should have been a national champion.
That's exactly the point. Like
Got
that
robbed.
team was like vintage Pat Dye, like getting it going. Bo Jackson, run it down your throat, like hard-nosed defenses. And it was just complete robbery that we weren't national champions that year. Just the AP poll and how they decided things made zero sense.
Wasn't it like Auburn was number 2 or number 3, and then number 1 and number 2 lost, and I think in the bowl games or something like that, and then they jumped number 4, number 5 to number 1. They jumped Auburn or something like that. It was something crazy.
Yeah, the scenario was so Auburn, Georgia, and Texas had this triangle where they all beat each other, right? Like we beat Georgia and Texas beat us and Georgia beat Texas or whatever, this whole triangle. And then you had Nebraska, who was undefeated above them, and they were seen as like the unbeatable team. But we were champions of the SEC, so we were the top of that triangle that I talked about. And so we were number 2 right behind them. And then Miami comes in the bowl game and beats the unbeatable Nebraska. And Miami had like a loss and a tie or something. Like we're not really in the conversation, but they gave it to them just because they beat Nebraska. Like it makes zero sense. Yeah. One of the many times Auburn kind of got screwed out of more than they should have had.
We ended up number 3 in the AP poll. Like we didn't even jump. And I think we beat, what was it, Michigan in the Sugar Bowl or something like that? That was Aldo Greco's famous game, wasn't it?
Yeah, sure did. The 9-7. Yep.
9-7. Yeah. I have a really cool story about Aldo Greco. I'll digress for really quick. And I'm not just like throwing out name dropping, but I used to work for Bob Baumhauer. Okay. So I was like his personal assistant for a while. And when Alabama played Notre Dame in the national championship game, remember, this is right when Gus was hired as the head coach. This was right after all this stuff went down. So they're playing the game in Miami, and Bob takes us to the game, and he has a boat in Fort Lauderdale. So we're on his boat, and they invite all the Jocks guys. So Al comes. So it's literally me and Al and then a ton of Alabama fans. And Al and I just sat on the back of the boat and just talked about Gus and all the Auburn coaches that were hired, and we were getting fired up for Auburn. So he's a good dude. So that's a really good one. My last one, I struggled over this one, but that 2013 team was a lot of fun. And I think one of the reasons I liked them so much was it's fun to watch a team face adversity and like get better and better and better, like have a tough game, but bounce back. And then they just got better and better and better each game. And then Nick Marshall just became a stone cold killer. He could run that read option. Trey Mason, unbelievable year, probably got robbed for the Heisman. And then you go play in the Rose Bowl and you're what was the catchphrase? 13 seconds away from a national championship. I was there. Sure, it left you with a sour taste in your mouth that last game, but man, that team was a blast. That team was so much fun. You felt like there was nobody that could beat that. Like you felt like you could beat anybody. You get on the field with anybody and you can beat them. I loved that 2013 football team.
Yeah, that was clearly that's going to be one a lot of people are going to pick, I think.
Sure.
Um, yeah, you have that loss to LSU, which, I think if it's not a monsoon in the first half, like maybe that game goes differently.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
you just it was just a great team, like you said, with the Nick Marshall and Trey Mason just running all over people. And all we did was just run the ball that year.
But it was awesome.
Oh, it was great.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
And you throw it deep to Sammy Coates, like you had the perfect
Sammy
wide
Coates. Yeah, absolutely.
Run one route, go deep. That's all we need you to do. Run around, chunk bombs, and run the read option. It was fantastic.
Oh, yeah. You got that game where we had the shootout where we beat Manziel. Of course, people are going to remember the two at the end, Georgia and Alabama. I was at Georgia. That was insane.
Yeah.
And actually, if you want to hear another story, I can piggyback off of your Del Greco one. I have a pretty funny story about where I was for that Iron Bowl.
Hit it.
So my uncle, for some reason, decided to schedule his wedding during that game.
Yeah.
And as you can imagine, that didn't make me very happy. So it's at this country club down in South Florida. And so it's kind of outside on this patio area. And they've got a bar up against the building where they're showing the game. The entire wedding, I was turned around in my chair watching the game, paying zero attention to the wedding. And everyone goes inside for the reception at like halftime. And I just sat out there by myself and watched like maybe the greatest Auburn game I've ever seen. And then just for no reason, it's just real quiet at this country club, The kick six happens, and I'm just running around like screaming in the middle of the patio. People just looking at me.
That's fantastic. I tell you, I watched. They started opening up the arena to watch football games. Like if you didn't have to, you go in the arena. I mean, I watched it there, and it was fantastic. It was crazy. I felt like I was in the stadium whenever they ran it back. That was definitely fun. You got a fun topic for the last one. Favorite, best, or just say best and worst. A football analyst. It could be play-by-play. It could be a color guy. It could be whatever. Past, present, future, doesn't matter. Give me your best and worst, or give me your best. Give me your best, and I'll give you my best, and then we'll do worst.
Okay, yeah, I kind of went all over the board, but I made all my people current.
Okay.
So, yeah, I've got on this list that I made, I've got play-by-plays and colors and different writers and people do podcasts and stuff. But my personal favorite is Josh Pate.
Okay.
I love that guy.
I do like Josh Pate.
I think he's got a very good podcast. He's just like, I like how he thinks about things with an open mind. Like nothing is ever like certain with him. It's like, this team has done this, and this, and put themselves in the right position to where they could do this. And it's like, this is what looks like this is going to happen. Because as we know, like sports aren't certainty. And I feel like too many people in the industry like talk about stuff with certainty. That's just something that I like about him. Really knowledgeable, like has great connections, like seems to get along really well with all the coaches and players. And he always puts out great content, just super sharp guy. If you ever need to know where to what bets to go place on MyBookie AG, you can go look at the Friday night lines that he has, and he rarely misses. He's just really sharp college football writer, and I love listening to his show.
So I don't want to break your heart, okay? But you know he's a massive Alabama fan.
Oh, I know he is.
Yeah. So I'm going to break your heart again. So he used to be a message board guy. He was a big message board. He was a big message board guy, and I don't know if you remember this, but whenever I say all this, and I love Josh Pate, so I don't hold any of this against him. I just think it's a funny story. When the Cam Newton saga was going on, he was not Josh Pate, as he was today, as he is known today. Like he wasn't even that big. He was just a message board guy. And if you remember all of the famous like Alabama message board stories that talked about Cam Newton in the story, he was the author of it's called Imagine, where he told the story of, the Victory Land unmarked debit cards and, all that you go into the slot machine. And that's where they went. Like he was the one that I think he's the one that told all these, this huge thread that went insanely popular. And it's funny. And he's from Columbus, Georgia too. That's even funnier. So he's from Georgia and he's a big Alabama fan, but I love Josh Pate too. If we're going to stay along that line, if we're going to stay sort of in that, I guess, area as far as like writer, not necessarily like an on the field, like in game guy. I really like Tyler Siskey, and I may be biased because he's been on the show before, but I like him because he's been in the game. And so to me, he's like a Josh Pate, but he's been involved, like he's been a part of these like a lot of these staffs, and he's been a part of a bunch of really good staffs. He's been involved with Hugh, he's been involved with Saban. I mean, you name it, he's coached with them, and I don't know, he's got a really unique perspective, and he just doesn't care what he says. He just says whatever's on his head. He's one of my favorites to listen to. I love that show, McCready and Siskey. I just really like listening to him. He sounds to me like I would be if I had all the experience. Like he says the things that are on my mind.
Yeah, I think that's a great choice as well.
Hit me with an analyst. Hit me with an analyst you like. Like in game, it could be color, play by play. Who's your favorite?
Okay, yeah. So I had two other guys on here who are both analysts. One's a play-by-play and one's a color. I'll just go ahead and say both of them. I had Kirk Herbstreit and Tom Hart on here. Those are two of my favorites. I really feel like what's kind of different with Kirk Herbstreit as opposed to a lot of the colors that you see is he seems to be like a little more fair.
Yeah.
Like I feel like he understands, like I feel like a lot of the colors sort of gravitate towards like the big good teams like your Alabamas and show them like way too much love like during the game when they're playing and stuff. But like Herbstreit understands the value in, you know, the teams that are good that, you know, might be a little bit below the surface. He kind of has more of a mind for that type of stuff. And I just think he's really sharp. His football mind is great. And yeah, I just like the way that he calls games, really.
There you go. Who's your least favorite?
Feinbaum, obviously.
Okay. I like it. My favorite color guy of all time, I know you're going to shake your head at this, and I got a really good reason why. I really love Gary Danielson. I loved Gary Danielson. I'm going to tell you why. Everybody that watched a game that Gary Danielson called thought he hated their team. It did not matter which side you were on. If you were an Alabama fan, you thought Gary hated you. If you're an Auburn fan, you thought Gary hated you. If you named the team, it didn't matter. And to me, that means you're probably doing a good job. You're probably being pretty down the line. And I know that like a lot of Auburn fans, probably a lot of folks that are listening to this are probably shaking your head. I thought he was a really good – he would know plays before they were going to happen. Like one time I thought he could have got us in trouble. I think it was the 2019 maybe SEC champ, not the 2019 Iron Bowl, or maybe it was the 2017 Iron Bowl. Whenever we did the jump pass, it was 17. It was 17. And he's like, man, I think this could be a jump pass. And like, sure enough, carry on runs, does the Tebow jump pass. I just always saw things like that from him. I felt like I learned a lot from the game. And I think the next guy that's going to be kind of like the next Herbstreit, again, I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this. I like Greg McElroy. I like him on jocks, and I like him on the sideline. I mean, as a color analyst, sometimes I feel like he goes too far to prove he's not a homer. Like it seems kind of fake at times, but that's just him being young and kind of learning it. I think he's really good. I really like him. You know, and my least favorite's got to be Beth Mowins. I don't care what anybody says. Take it back to Rick and Bubba days when they would sound the alarm and tell you what game she was calling. I don't know. I can't get into it.
Yeah, I think that there were a few funny things about what you said. I had McElroy was on my list of honorable mentions. I feel the same way as you do about him. Despite him being an Alabama guy, I know. But I just think, he's a very good commentator. Mowins was on my list for the least. She was one of my honorable mentions for that. And I think you'll be proud of me. I'm not so predictable. Gary Danielson, I'm not his biggest fan, but I agreed with the points that you made about him, why you like him. But he was not my all the way down least favorite. So
yeah. When we had Brad for a few years after Vern retired, Vern was great, but he kind of got out of his element. And then it was just like, I'm trying to just say my catchphrase too many times in a game. Oh my, and all that kind of stuff. So when we had Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson for those few years, I thought that was Brad Nessler is my favorite play-by-play guy. Like his voice is incredible. I love Brad Nessler. So I miss that tandem for the very short period of time that we got him. So that's good stuff, man. I don't know where you guys are coming from. It's like you guys all have your own podcast or something, and y'all all kill it every single week. Another one. I mean, I feel like I'm just talking to a buddy sitting around a fire or something like that. So, J-Pat, you actually have a podcast. You said you wanted to talk about it or plug it. Feel free, man. You're great. You're very, very entertaining. So let everybody know where they can find you and support you.
Yeah, thanks for all the praise again, Charlie, Kyle Rush. I really appreciate it coming from you. But yeah, I do have a podcast that's on YouTube. It's called the Evil Fantasy Podcast. You can go look it up, Fantasy Sports Podcast. We, of course, do fantasy football, but I play a lot of different fantasy sports. So if you're into like fantasy basketball or baseball or hockey or whatever, like I talk about all that too. So it's just a general come hang out and, talk about fantasy sports and sports in general and stuff, and we have a good time. It's usually like this, me and a buddy of mine, and we're just chatting about our fantasy teams and what's going on. It's always a fun time. So you can check it out there.
That stuff's always fun to talk about. Definitely. Guys, I know I can't get enough of these Friendship Fridays. We may need to start doing it every day of the week. I mean, it's a ton of fun. We're going to have another one next week. It's going to be electric, just like it has every single week. So, guys, if you like the video, like it. If you like the channel, subscribe to it. Let us know in the comments who your favorite and least favorite analysts are. If you want to, I know I'm going to get just completely, on over the Gary Danielson take. So just let me have it. What's your favorite Auburn team that we didn't mention? And then we'll, have the discussion in the comments. So, again, we'll be back again soon. It's another episode of the Top Button Podcast. Stay buttoned.
Thanks for listening, and drive home safely.